Hey guys, welcome back to Mo's Game Table. Today we're going to take a look inside Red Storm, the air war over central Germany, 1987. This is a game designed by Douglas Bush and published by GMT Games. This is an evolution of the Downtown series, which was published in 2004 by Lee Birmingham Wood, which is why it says here the system design is from him. And it is just the natural progression to go from the air war over Vietnam to the hypothetical World War III air war over central Germany in the late 1980s. And I love this cover by Antonis Karidis. This is just very evocative and sets the tone for the game. So let's take a look at the back of the box and see what this game's all about. Well, there's a lot of text on the back of this box, so I'm only going to cover some of it. It says here, Red Storm is a standalone game using the proven Downtown game system to simulate the air battles of a hypothetical war between the air forces of the Warsaw Pact and NATO over central Germany in 1987. The game's 36 scenarios, including 4 solo scenarios using a new solo bot, and 2 campaign scenarios that link multiple raids together over a period of days, depict a wide range of air combat situations. Like Downtown and Elusive Victory before it, Red Storm simulates these air combat scenarios in detail, but at an operational scale where players see the big picture, with an emphasis on mission planning in a complex threat environment. Players are tasked with organizing ground defenses using many different weapons, as well as integrating numerous aircraft flights with different roles such as bombing, suppression of enemy air defenses, electronic jamming, and air superiority. In line with the initial games in the series, the rules, thoroughly revised for the modern air battle space, reflect the human side of the conflict with a focus on morale of the real people that would have flown the aircraft and fought on the ground. And it breaks down all the different aircraft that you're going to have in the game. For the Warsaw Pact, you're going to have the MiG-21, MiG-23, and the 27 Su-24 and 25. And for NATO, you're going to have US, UK, West German, Netherlands, Belgium, and Canada, with 42 different types of aircraft: F-4, F-16s, A-10s, F-117s, F-15s, F-111s, so quite a few aircraft to use in this game. Here is a look at the sample counters. You have the game contents. We have 5 full-color counter sheets, 2 22 by 34-inch maps, 3 aircraft data cards, 5 player aid cards, an appendices booklet, rules booklet, scenario booklet, 2 log sheets, and 2 10-sided dice. It is rated 8 high on the complexity scale, and it is rated as a 6 solitaire. And there is a look at the map that comes with the game as well. So let's take a look inside the box and see what you get. We have our 2D10s, baggies, scenario book, rule book, appendices book, counter sheets, about 4.5 of those, a bunch of player aid cards, and one more here. Nope, 2 more. Our maps and our flight log sheets. So let's set up the map to take a closer look at the game. And here's a look at the map that comes with Red Storm. There are 2 separate map sections. You're going to lay one over top of the other, and they'll marry up in the middle pretty easy. You're going to want to slap some plexi down to protect the paper map, as well as to keep it nice and flat. You've got East Germany to the right. West Germany is a predominant area of the map. These purple areas are urban areas. You also have tons of airfields, as you can see, dotted around the map. They have different classes, and the classes tell you the runway length, which will in turn tell you how many flights the airfield can handle. I believe 1 and 2 can only handle up to 3 flights per turn, and anything from class 3 and above can handle unlimited flights because they have longer runways, which makes sense. Next to the runways, you're going to have these little markers which are going to say L or M, which is the level of AAA that you're going to have protecting it. And the rest of the terrain features are fairly self-explanatory. We're going to take a look at the player aid cards. There are 5 of them, and they're mostly fold-outs except for 1. It's a very information-dense game, so we're going to go through this fairly quickly. We have our movement actions, turntable, AAA, information. Inside we have our air-to-air engagements, how they're handled, maneuver, air-to-air combat geometry, shot resolution, and on the back we have the damage allocation, scatter, and morale checks. Player aid card 2 covers your detection table, stand-up and spot jamming, track table, flight visual ID. Inside is your SAM attack and defense, as well as your anti-radiation missiles. And on the back we have scenario random events. Player aid card 3, we get into flight quality table, recovery, ordnance speed limits, ground unit organic AAA table, bailouts, CSARs, CBU capability, line of sight, ground attack, attack profiles, and damage tables, weather table, and then we get to the back, which has campaign ground unit replacements, ground collisions, the arc and hemispheres diagram, and the campaign runway repair and SAM ammo tables. Player aid card 4 covers your scenario setup, sequence of play during the scenario, and completing the scenario. On the back, we have our ISR, seed, and early warning tables. And player aid card 5 handles the bot for the game, everything from flight activation to movement, primary and combat actions. Inside we get into the flight engagement actions, non-combat actions, AAA activation, SAM actions, SAM AAA and ISR, and on the back gives you the full solo rules, sequence of play, and the bot random event instructions. Now we'll take a look at the aircraft data charts here for NATO. This is the United States. Gives you a list of the airframes, all of the pertinent data, and any notes that you can reference at the bottom of the sheet. This is a fold-out. I just decided to keep it folded so that way you can get a closer look at it. Gives you air-to-air weapons and then the notes here at the bottom. And then fleshing out NATO, we have Belgium, Canada, and Netherlands with their airframes. And on the back, we have a little bit about each of the aircraft available to NATO. So we get to the Soviet data chart. Lots of aircraft on this one. Then on the inside, we have the East German aircraft data chart and a little bit about each of the Warsaw Pact aircraft. And we get a big thick pad of flight log sheets. This is going to allow you to keep track of all your aircraft. And on the inside sheet, you're going to be able to run your campaign planning sheet here. And we'll take a look at the counter sheets for the Warsaw Pact first. We have your Soviet counters on the left, East German on the right, as well as different administrative counters for altitude, orbit points, and weather. In Soviet ground forces, armor mechanized artillery support, different missiles, SAM sites, more admin counters over here, including nuke attack markers. Then we have our NATO aircraft and NATO ground forces, as well as some more admin counters. And then the final sheet of counters. Now we'll take a look inside the rulebook. It is a 54-page rulebook, and as I said before with the player aid cards, this is a fairly information-dense game, so expect there to be a learning curve. It's a pretty heavy game. Inside we get our introduction, and then we get into a glossary of terms, game equipment, how to read your map, terrain features, the playing pieces, and then how to set up your scenarios, completing your scenarios, and then different types of air units and how those are handled. Then we get to initiative, which is handled through a chit pull, movement, counter placement, and facing. Other thing to remember in this game is not only are you going to be handling facing, but altitude changes as well, and different speeds. You're going to have combat throttle and dash throttle, which is going to affect your movement points and the different types of movement you can do. Turning, zoom climbs, how to handle mountain terrain and maneuver markers, BVR avoid markers, SAM avoid, formations, raid tasking, and planning. Flight navigation, flight path, navigating the flight path. If you're a ground guy familiar with 9 lines and writing them up, handing them off to the FAC, who in turn pass them up to the Airedales for their ground support missions, that's what this section is. This is your ingress, release the target, and your egress off if they're going to RTB or if they're going to go off mission and go into cap or whatever. That's what this is. Then you have your near target hex, other taskings, standoff jamming and tasking, close escort tasking, multiple raids, rally point, orbit points, multi-role aircraft flight abort, and then there are some advanced navigation rules. Airfield operations, these are the airfields which we talked about before. I was correct, it does say open class 1 or 2 airfields may launch and recover up to 3 flights per scenario. Open class 3 plus airfields may launch and recover any number of aircraft during a scenario. So that's why you've got to pay attention to the numbers next to those airfields when you're running your missions. And then the rest of how you handle the airfield operations, landing, takeoffs, things like that. Detection, air-to-air combat, quite a bit on air-to-air combat as you'd expect. Air unit damage, post-combat procedures, anti-aircraft artillery, which will probably be just as long, SAMs and radars, air-to-ground ordnance when you're going to be doing your ground support missions, air-to-air ground attacks, how those are handled, ground-to-target damage, electronic countermeasures, good number of illustrated examples to help support the text, fuel and recovery, random events, weather, night, recon missions, helicopters, CSAR for when your pilots have to bail out, ground units, airfields, and then the front, scenario conditions and scenario setup. All that is broken down for you here. Then you get to victory and then solitaire rules and how those work for solitaire play. Campaign games, only a couple of pages of solitaire rules, so not a lot to take in for that, but campaign play, several pages, all the way to the rules index, which starts on page 54, and that will go through to the back of the rulebook. We'll take a quick look through the scenario book. It is 59 pages in length. There are 36 scenarios, 30 standard game scenarios, 2 campaign scenarios, and then 4 solitaire scenarios. These scenarios are going to be laid out all the same way. You're going to have your background targets, scenario conditions, your orders of battle, your special scenario rules, and then your victory conditions. We'll flip all the way to the back and see if we can find these campaign ones. We have campaign 1, which is bombs on target, which will give you the different targets in the bombing campaign, and then your orders of battle, and then random events. Then you have eyes on target, which is campaign scenario 2, which will give you the same thing, and you have your random events, victory conditions, and then we get into the solitaire scenario, starting off with a cast scenario and the awesome A10. Then we have fighter sweep, and then other solitaire scenarios until we get to the back of the book. Then we have our appendices book, which is 24 pages in length. We have orders of battle, airfields, ground unit locations, examples of play, designer's notes and tactical hints, and a select bibliography. Inside we've got our orders of battle tables and how to use those for both NATO and Warsaw Pact. Then we get to the airfield locations, and it gives you the classes for each of the airfields. Ground unit locations including hex locations. Examples of play start off with Fox 1 for the first example of play. Illustrations to help support it. Then we get example of play 2, cleared hot. So you're getting an air-to-air and you're going to get an air-to-ground example of play through a couple of turns each, which is great. Then we get to the designer's notes and tactical hints. Tactical hints start here on page 22. Then we have a select bibliography of different books you can read about air combat, as well as the planning map here at the back of the appendices book. And that is the look at everything you get inside of Red Storm, a game designed by Douglas Bush and published by GMT Games. As you can see, there's quite a bit of game in this box. You get densely packed rulebook and player aid cards, 36 scenarios, a lot to explore over time. Bear in mind, it's going to be a learning curve because, like I said, densely packed rules. There's a lot to grok in this system, but it's going to give you a pretty damn good simulation feel, I think, for a hypothetical World War III air combat over Western Germany between NATO and Warsaw Pact. So if that sounds interesting to you, this is a game to definitely check out. Well, I hope that helps you guys out if you've been curious about this one. If you have any comments or questions, post them down below. Thanks for tuning in, guys. See you next time.